He's getting us screaming. We're good. All right.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Good evening and welcome to the August 3rd, 2023 meeting of the Athens-Clarke County Planning Commission. For those of you viewing the meeting remotely, you'll find the meeting agenda on the Planning Department website at accgov.com/planning. For those of you attending in person, on the table by the door, you'll find a sign-in sheet and copies of tonight's agenda. For each agenda item, we'll begin with a report from ACC planning staff. This is followed by a presentation by the applicant not to exceed 10 minutes. We'll then hear from members of the public. 3 minutes are allowed for any member of the public who wishes to address the commission. When addressing the commission, please provide your name, address, and the nature of your interest in the project. And please direct your comments to the planning commission and not to the applicants. Exhibits may be displayed by the applicants or members of the public at the podium. Written correspondence received by noon yesterday has been forwarded to the commission and is part of the public record. Any additional written material to be placed into the record must be read during public comment within the 3-minute time limit. For all speakers, please pay attention to the timing device near the projector screen. The device will display a yellow warning light when you have 30 seconds left and then a red light when your time is up. After the public comment period, the applicant or their representative may request a 2-minute response. After that, the applicant will take their seat in the audience. At this point, the public portion for this agenda item is closed and the Planning Commission will proceed to discuss the item. We will receive no additional public or applicant comments unless requested by a commissioner. Finally, please note that the microphones in this room are sensitive and the meeting is being broadcast live. Please turn off or silence your cell phones. Okay, so should I go ahead with the first couple of items or?
Just a couple of quick announcements and then we're going to jump into that. A little bit out of order, but did want to make an announcement. We do have a new Planning Commission member, Alex Sams, who was appointed Tuesday night at about 8 o'clock. So he is on a short clock, but he has already contacted us about wanting to be here. I've not seen him come in yet, but if he comes in, we'd like for him to sit up here with us. We put a packet out in front for him to, and he understands that I think proper procedure would be for him. If he wants to participate, he can, but he would just abstain from all votes since he's not had an opportunity to review any of the information. But so if he comes in, we will do that. Also wanted to recognize John Hawkins. We have a new county attorney that has joined us. Some of y'all may remember John. He was with us for several years before taking a position in Rome as an attorney over there. We are fortunate to have him back. He is working back and forth between an office in Rome and here. So a lot of nights he will be with us virtually. So he's on the screen. He can see us. What he is seeing from his home office is what people at home see on the YouTube stream. He is engaged with us through his microphone. And so we won't see him. But so if you hear somebody, if you have a question for our attorney, ask and he can answer it. And if you hear somebody speak from behind the green curtain, that's John, that he's hiding and we can't see him. But
we pay attention to it.
But we pay attention to him. We're super thankful to have John back with us and he's going to be a great asset for us. So welcome, John, if your mic's on.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. Glad to be back.
All right, thank you. And let's see. And then we will move into a report from the nominating committee, Madam Chair.
Okay. Should I do that first and then
Yes.
do the, okay, great.
Let's do that first.
Okay, so we'll take a report from our nominating committee member.
So the nominating committee, we met in June. We came up with 2 members of the commission, and I'd like to thank Matt Hall for being accepting the nominating role as president, and as chair, and Alice Kenyon for accepting the vice chair.
That's the report from the nominating committee. We would need a motion to accept that. Motion to accept.
Second.
Okay. All right.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed.
Don't let president go to your head.
So we're gonna.
All right, so y'all are going to switch seats and Matt will take over from here, and congratulations to the 2 of you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yes, thank you for 2 good years, Sarah.
Look at this. This is just evidence. Come on. Switch waters.
All right, and that brings us to the first item of general business on our agenda, introduction of staff reports and all other documents submitted to the planning commission at this meeting into the official record. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Alice, second by Sarah. All in favor?
Aye.
And item 2, approval of the prior meeting's minutes from June 1st, 2023, planning commission.
So moved.
Alice, motion.
Second.
Joey, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Brad, is there any reports?
There is not a report this month, but as we move into the fall, there will be reports coming as our consultant is getting through the data portion and into the modeling portion of our long-range plan for the NPF. So there will be information forthcoming, but we're not quite there yet.
Okay. So that brings us to item 1 under new business, 160 and 170 Whitehall Way. Item number zone -2023-06-1135.
Okay, you mind moving that, adjusting that video just a little bit more? Thank you. Okay, we've got item this evening at 160 and 170 Whitetail Way Zone 2023-06-1135. Can you click back on the PowerPoint? Thank you, sir. Okay, we've got a rezone here from employment office to employment industrial for both these parcels. The future land use is employment center, that is to remain on both the parcels. Combined, they're right around 22 3/4 acres. This is an expansion. I'll show you here in just a second. There's a current light industrial operation going on there. The expansion is into the second property there. We've got 2 phases proposed. The first phase is the one that we'll be hearing mostly about this evening, but they also they want to prepare for the potential future with a second pad in the rear. The first phase being around 50,000 square foot building with surface parking. The second phase would be a little over 18,000 square feet with additional surface parking. Lots of topography out at this site. This is the former QDMA site. If any of you have been out to the operations they had there. So you'll see the existing facility there at the one property. And then, so they're trying to bring that into more direct compliance and open up the second property there, which is the larger of the 2 pieces. You can sort of see through some of that topography where there's a creek running along the back, and then you can see from the boundary on the eastern side, there's some water on that side as well. So lots of water, lots of topography out here. I believe there's 100 feet of fall from the front of this property all the way to the back. If we're trying to orient ourselves, Trade Street comes right out here at a traffic light across from Sam's Club. This is kind of the back end of the Coggins Park Industrial Park we have over off of Atlanta Highway. So you'll see the zoning here going from EO to EI. No other existing EI around there, but the compatibility of these 2 zones, staff does not feel this is really creating an isolated district. This is just allowing a few more uses potentially at these 2 properties. And you can see the rest of the industrial park that kind of goes around there. This is neighboring to the Winslow Park development that this board has seen some activity on, which is a planned development with commercial in the front and then mixed use density throughout a portion of it, followed by some larger neighborhood to the rear. So a big mix of residential. That's been on the books for quite a bit. You guys have seen a few modifications of that over the years. As mentioned before, the future land use is to remain the same on these 2 properties. I apologize. The only way to be able to see this was to turn it sideways. So we've got the initial phase of around 50,000 square feet in the front. They would like to pad out the back to have that potential second phase in the future. Fairly significant retaining walls here. As I mentioned before, this creek along the back property line really gets steep back in this back portion, and then it gets steep falling off to the east as well. Existing facility they have here, they're trying to create a bit of an industrial campus effect. So this is compatible with the future land use map, similar to the industrial uses throughout Coggins Park. Recently sold QDMA site there, so this applicant has the opportunity to expand a little bit of their operations. Staff just has one condition, and let me go back real quickly just to kind of show you. So this extension of Whitetail Way right here is to connect up with a road that is in the Winslow Park plan development. So staff is asking for a condition that this 50-foot strip of land, future right-of-way, be provided along the southern portion of these two properties that would connect Whitetail Way over to the western property line. So with that, I will conclude the staff reports, and I'll just go ahead and leave that up there for you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. At this time, we will hear from the applicant.
Thank you. My name is Mark Campbell. I'm with Carter Engineering. Appreciate y'all taking the time to consider this project tonight. I have had an opportunity to meet with staff several times. Appreciate the input from them. My client is Russell Gray from Nakal Properties, which is an international company. You'll have to forgive me. I'm from Georgia, so sometimes I say Nakal, but I've been corrected by Mr. Gray, who's Canadian, that it is actually pronounced Nakal. So he's been in the Athens area since the late 90s and had an opportunity to watch his business continue to grow. Part of the reason for the request from the existing EO to EI is he actually has another property that's over off of Commerce Drive that's already zoned to EI. So in 2007, he had an opportunity to purchase a building there for part of his business development. It was approximately 12,000 square feet, and about 7 years he outgrew that. He moved next door to 380 Commerce to a building that was about 25,000 square feet. He's now filled it to its capacity. So he's owned this property here for about 2.5 years, looked at other opportunities, but really likes the existing building where he is there at the corner of Trade Street and Whitetail Way. Loves the atmosphere. I had an opportunity to walk the property, and it's a beautiful property. So instead of moving somewhere else, he would really like to stay in Athens-Clarke County to continue to develop and grow this international company that he has, and to be able to really put everybody together in one spot, although on 2 separate parcels. The totality of the approximately 23 acres will allow him to do that while remaining to keep the property beautiful. It will allow it to grow and to provide functions, but also to be a good place where you can come work. I think all of us would like an opportunity to be able to work somewhere that is beautiful and to have a beautiful environment around you. And we certainly like the idea of people being excited about going to work and to continue to attract people from this beautiful town and the elements that the university provides as it relates to art and research and some of those things that all come together as part of what he would like to see in this company. So it's really just an expansion of an existing building, an existing business by somebody who's a local business owner and property owner, and appreciate the work of staff to kind of work to where we are here tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. And again, my name is Mark Campbell.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who speak in favor of this proposal? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against it? All right, we'll bring the discussion behind the rail.
Before we get started, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, but I failed to introduce a couple of people when we started. Just make sure you know they're here for you if you have questions. We have members, as we always have for the last several months, from our fire department here if there are questions of them. And then we have Mr. Hugh Ogle from our utilities department, who is with us primarily for the next item at Newbridge Road because of the issue of the lift station. But I did not let you know they were here. So they're here for you if you need them this evening.
Thank you. Does anyone want to start us off?
I'm just going to make a motion to approve with staff's condition. Second.
A Motion by Sarah, second by.
Make it the other Sarah this ring.
Second by Sarah Gehring. Any further discussion? Can I just ask for confirmation from the applicant? Do you have any concerns about the staff's proposed condition? No. Okay. And motion is to approve as with the staff. If there's no further discussion, should we do a roll call or
I think we just do a voice vote.
all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. So that brings us to item 2 under new business, which is 1125 Newton Bridge Road. Item number zone -2023-06-1139. Staff report.
Good evening, commissioners. The staff presentation for Newton Bridge, you've seen it multiple times by now. It is basically the same. The request is to rezone from employment industrial with conditions to RS25 or larger single-family zones. This also requires a future land use change from employment center to traditional neighborhood. The purpose of the request would be to build 216 single-family detached houses. The applicant has voluntarily offered to bind the site plan, and the significant issue here would be requires approval of a wastewater pump station as well. This is the site as it currently exists. You can see it's largely forested. There's the park, Holland Park down here. We've got Saxon Woods residential subdivision up here. We've got some light industrial, commercial kind of stuff along Newton Bridge. And then we've got a utility easement running through here. Right now on the left, it is the employment center. It's a bit of the reason why it's out there is it's a bit of a holdover from when we rezoned the county 20+ years ago. There was thought that this might be a potential site for some kind of research use or something like that. Nothing has materialized since then. The ask is to go to traditional neighborhood, which you can see is consistent with the area. There's rural and there's also traditional neighborhood, which is what those subdivisions already are. The ask is also to rezone from employment industrial with conditions to RS25. Again, RS25 is what borders this property in those two subdivisions. This is the plan. It is unchanged since you've seen it on multiple occasions. We do have the creek running through the bottom of this image. The applicant has offered to create a connection across the creek to the park, pending park approval of that. And then you have the utility easement here. The ask is consistent with the future land use and zoning maps. It is, however, inconsistent with the future land use description for traditional neighborhood and the 2023 comp plan, largely because it doesn't have those kinds of traditional development qualities, such as front porches and alleys and walkability and compact, walkable traditional kind of architecture and lot layouts and those kinds of things. It also, staff has concerns about the excessive cost of public services, the additional road improvements out here, the need for a pump station. It's entirely possible here that we would, if this project was built, it would require more expenses in maintenance from the public than it provides back in tax revenue. There's also no housing variety here. It is just 216 single family houses, which again, the future land use and the comp plan call for housing variety within developments. The design lacks those design elements that would make it more traditional. And it's also very car dependent. This is a location that's very car dependent, and the design itself, the front loaded garages. So it's geared entirely around the car. However, we would say that the site is unlikely to be used according to the existing future land use and zoning. So it is ripe for rethinking the future of land use on this site. It does lack the infrastructure to support development here, most notably sewer access, but also road infrastructure. And like I said, it could impose that excessive cost burden. Multiple departments, although the applicant has voluntarily offered a binding plan, multiple other departments have said, please do not approve a binding plan on this site because they have concerns about their standards and their codes and the applicant's ability to meet those things based on what they've currently provided. Failed to update here, but this is just a comment only this time. They will be coming back for a second review at a later cycle. So that concludes the staff report.
Thank you, Stephen. And we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening, commissioners. My notebook is a little bit bigger than your podium here. Tiffany Hogan on behalf of DR Horton, 1371 Dogwood Drive, Conyers, Georgia. We are here again with the proposed Newton Bridge development. And we seem to keep getting stuck in a hamster wheel with this one because it's interesting that the comments that we received before were to make the plan binding, and now we're hearing don't make it binding. We are willing to make it binding. We'll continue to work with each of your departments to meet the requirements to make it binding. Staff has presented the overall plan to you. I want to just jump into addressing some of the concerns, and then mostly would like to hear your feedback so that we can flip that master plan back to you next week in order for us to get that presented for actual recommendation. One of the main concerns is about development in this area. As staff pointed out, this was rezoned for what they hoped would be a research facility over 20 years ago. That has not come to any fruition, nor has it been a site that any other industry has been interested in that area. What you also notice about this site or saw excuse me, is that it is wedged in between two existing neighborhoods as well as a park. So while we understand and we have heard some feedback from the community as well as various commissioners that this area should be preserved for industrial or something else, that may be true for other areas, but with this property being wedged between two existing mature neighborhoods and a park already, we do believe that the best use of this would be a residential use in this site for a couple of reasons. One, an industrial or other use at the site would generate additional traffic as well as large trucks that would then run right in front of those existing neighborhoods as well as the park. Whereas if you make it a residential development, we have seen already the traffic study as well as worked with your Department of Transportation on other improvements, even to intersections that are not adjacent to this site in order to mitigate some of the traffic from the residences. But any traffic engineer would tell you that more would be produced by an industrial or another commercial type use at that site. One of the other concerns that we've heard is regarding the pump station request. As you all are aware, there has been an application on file for a pump station for this site. We have worked very diligently for almost 2 years now with engineers in order to determine the type system that would be needed for this site, as well as met with your utility staff members multiple times in order to determine what Athens-Clarke County would require of that. We understand the power that will need to be on the site, including solar backup. We have agreed to that, as well as making a financial contribution for future maintenance, even after we provide the infrastructure that is put into place. We have agreed to that. Additionally, one of the things that we've heard from commissioners as well as residents in the area is that nothing has been done to this area in a while, and there is recognition that it hasn't been done because the sewer and other infrastructure is not there in order for future developments. Well, with the installation of the pump station that we are proposing putting in place, the station that we have proposed to be built will actually have additional capacity that our engineers have estimated can serve potentially 2 million additional square feet of industrial, if industrial is what is desired on the rest of the corridor in that area. So this development and rezoning, along with approval of our pump station, could actually help to generate and trigger some future development in the area that has not seen any activity in more than 20 years. We also heard the concerns from community. We hosted another community meeting just last week regarding this project to hear updated feedback from the residents. Only 4 residents from the Saxon Woods community showed up. One of those residents has been very active with the project from the inception. The others that showed up just had questions about the project and what it would be like. One of the couples has lived in the area, I believe they said, for more than 30 years. So they just really don't want to see anything change in the area. They're comfortable with the way that it is. The feedback that we did hear, though, that was productive were questions about continuation of the sidewalks along the frontage. We explained to them that we will have sidewalks for all of the property that we own, and that if we are given access by the government in order to extend that, since they own the park that's adjacent, then we could definitely consider that, and that would be a possibility. But we cannot say a definite yes to extending onto property that we don't own or have access to. So that was one of the main concerns there. Also, of course, traffic was a concern for them. We pointed out that we did agree to make some improvements to Cathwood, and I always forget one of the street names. Benson, thank you, as well, which are intersections that are nearby the property. That was understood, and they hoped that that would help with the additional traffic generated by the residential development. I will leave the remainder of my time for any questions that you may have, but I really just look forward to your comments so that we can get that master plan flipped. And I do want to address one additional thing. Looking at Commissioner Hall reminded me, one of the other concerns before was the use of the open space. Obviously, with a binding plan, there is no need for the condition that had been proposed. We would be bound to the design that is there, so that open space would remain as we have always planned for it to. I will leave the remainder of my time for any questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Huff. Is there anyone in the audience who's here to speak in favor of it? Is there anyone here to speak against this app? All right. Break the discussion behind the rail. Kristen.
So, question for staff about the lift station. Like, I'm curious, like, is it something that's going to be loud? Does it smell? Like, how does it work? Is this like a huge burden on the county? Like, how does this work?
Hey, y'all, you come on up, you. 'Cause I can't answer those questions.
Unfortunately, a lift station dealing with sanitary sewer is gonna smell like sanitary sewer, but there will be odor control measures put in place as part of the conditions for building the lift station. There will be a cost associated. Some of that burden was fees the representative was speaking about that they're gonna put up as part of the specifications to build a lift station in Athens-Clarke County. But it will be an ongoing, there will be some noise. There will be a considerable amount of solar panels installed as part of the power generation for the pump station. So that should help with some of the noise. But there will be backup generators if there's a storm, power goes out. There will be diesel, they will run, so there will be some noise associated with that. And then there's lighting, access. There will be maintenance vehicles in there considerably often. Sanitary sewer is one of the harshest environments you can put a mechanical pump into. Anything mechanical will break down, so there will be considerable maintenance activities at a lift station throughout the year.
And so while it's being constructed by the developer, I guess there's ACC standard for building a lift station.
Yes, ma'am.
once it's up and running though, it's ACC staff that's maintaining the lift station.
Yes, ma'am.
You'll have 2 others in the county, is that right?
Right now, we have one
Okay.
that's it's behind the Weatherly Wood subdivision, out off Lexington Road between Lexington Road and Beaver Dam Road. And then Holland Park actually utilizes the lift station. While Holland Park is a Athens-Clarke County entity, it is not a public lift station maintained by the Athens-Clarke County Utilities Division.
Huh.
We assist Holland Park when they need assistance with our maintenance staff, but we don't, it's not a public, you couldn't tie a sanitary sewer line into it. It's not a public lift station. Nor was it designed to have the extra capacity to be a public lift station.
And do you have a sense of like what the cost would be to just like annual maintenance of a lift station like this?
No, ma'am, not off the top of my head, I do not. They would, with what they would propose on their design, then we would go with our maintenance staff and run some comparisons. I would be afraid to give a number for that.
And then, so the plan has this the closer to the corner of Benson Drive and Newton Bridge Road, right? So like how big of, like what kind of structure is a lift station?
The lift station primarily is in the ground.
Okay.
It'll be a large concrete structure buried at whatever elevation the engineer comes up with. There will be a small gabled canopy, more than likely, constructed over the lift station because there's an electrical control panel. The lift station controls, all that is above ground, and there will be lighting. It'll always be lit with a chain link fence around the enclosure with signage for the electrical hazard and its state lift station. So it will be noticeable unless they plant something around it, but we don't want anything really planted in a sanitary sewer easement. There will be lines coming into the lift station and then the line going out of the lift station that would tie into the gravity system up to Benson Drive. I'm assuming where they're planning on going with enforcement.
Sarah, do you?
Yes, more pump station questions. I wish we had that map up that Mark presented at the work session with the red line of where sewer currently reaches. My question is, do you have a sense of how this lift station could impact future development in that area? Or what would that look like? How would it, like, how does building capacity like that work?
She alluded to that they were going to build the lift station with extra capacity. And part of our specifications is looking at the area and engineers determining, with an best estimated guess of what kind of demands would be to develop that piece of property like across the road.
Mm.
So they're going, if this is approved, the lift station would have to be built with extra capacity, which would provide the property across the road, or even to develop on out the green space behind them or.
Okay, so it could have an impact on the adjacent properties,
It could, yes, ma'am.
but not further out than that.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, I hadn't thought about that, but I mean, if you ran it would have to be a gravity sewer.
Mm.
And probably another lift station to the lift station, and I don't know that we would want to get into that.
Yeah.
Because there's a river crossing right there.
Mhm.
So
So
there would be some challenges. It would, pretty much, you're just looking at the surrounding property.
Yeah, okay. That's good to know.
Can I ask one more, same with Sarah, if we have the map up, I could tell, but are the surrounding neighborhoods served by septic?
Like I say, Holland Park is served by sanitary sewer. They have a lift station. The residential, Saxon Woods up above it is on septic. They're not on sanitary sewer.
And then is this property too dense for septic, or I'm just,
The way that design is, yes, ma'am, it's too dense for septic.
which, I mean, one appreciates leaving all that backspace open, so, but I think that, Kristen Zara's thorough questions get all mine about lift station.
I got one for you. Lift station and pump station, is that the same thing? Or we just use it interchangeably?
Yeah, what we're talking about here, the lift station is called a pump, so a pump station. So yes, it's the same thing.
It just has to go uphill for a little while.
Okay, got it. And do you know, I know that Sarah had asked you what it costs to maintain these, but what does it cost to build one of these in the first place?
It's going to depend on the size and how deep the well needs to be for the lift station, sizing of the pumps, which horsepower. Of course, there'll be it could vary. I don't, without knowing the design and the actual dimensions of the lift station, and I'd be afraid to say.
But like, are we talking about 7 figures? Like what, I don't even know the order of magnitude of a project like that.
You could be talking several $100,000 to 7 figures, yes, depending on the size, like I said.
Okay, okay.
And then, like I say, it would be a pretty significant solar field there somewhere.
And is the general, like, the general sort of way that folks in your department are thinking, you want less septic development? Is septic something that you see is not ideal? Like, we don't want much more of that?
Athens-Clarke County doesn't own or maintain any septic fields.
Mhm.
But that expense of maintenance and repair or replacement falls on the homeowner when there is an issue with a septic field. So then it becomes EPD issue or Georgia Health Department issue.
Right.
As far as enforcement. We would rather see Athens-Clarke County residents on the Athens-Clarke County sewer
Okay,
collection system. Yes, ma'am.
that's very helpful. Thank you.
These lots are probably about a third the size of what would be required if they were on septic.
Yeah.
They're probably 8,000 to 10,000 square feet, and it's 25,500 minimum of suitable soil area for a septic tank.
Katie?
I just wanted to reconfirm it, that you couldn't possibly estimate how much the applicant's contribution would cover, like how many years of maintenance cover?
There is and I apologize for not having this information with me tonight, but there is a formula in the pump station guidelines that Athens-Clarke County will give to the engineer that will estimate a percentage to help cover that cost.
These are all things great questions. These are things that we can pull together for the report when it comes back to you next time.
That'd be really helpful. Cost of services is probably the biggest.
Yep.
Here.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you for more detail, but if that's something that the applicant and our utilities department and y'all, Brad, will pull together some numbers on for next time, I think that's good enough.
They're probably, the way the process works, I'm assuming they're not going to be finalized binding numbers, but we can certainly give you a range of scope of what we're looking at.
Yeah, it'd be hard to give a price on something until the actual design was completed and to determine size of pumps and the generators, and it would determine the size of the pumps and the depth. It would determine the diameter of the lift station. There's a lot of technical data that would have to go in there. If it goes one way or the other, it could sway those numbers a considerable amount.
Understood. Yeah, I was just, the staff report included the statement from Mr. Jarquez that it's possible there could be more maintenance expenses down the road than the tax revenue generated by these 216 homes. And that seems important to me if true. And so to the extent that we can, I think, quantify what the property tax revenues of 216 homes would be fairly, accurately, but knowing what the maintenance expenses are, whether it's $1 million a year or 200,000 a year, or
we could put you a rough number together.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And I'm sure the applicant will provide whatever help in that regard that they can. Alice and then Sarah.
This one is for you, so unless anyone else you can probably.
I want to say one thing, but I'm I'm less interested. I was more just curious about how much it costs to build one of these, but I think for our purposes, I think, if I'm not speaking out, if I'm speaking out of turn, let me know, but just, we're interested in the maintenance costs primarily because the applicant would bear the costs of building the lift station. So I think it's more trying to figure out the statement about tax revenue and whether that would cover the infrastructure needed to support it.
There would be a considerable amount of maintenance to a lift station of this size. As I alluded to earlier, you put a mechanical device in the most harsh environment that you can imagine with things, a lot of things people don't want to work in or own or. So but there would be a considerable amount of maintenance associated with this lift station.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Further
Um,
discussion.
So I just wanted to add, hopefully this information wouldn't be too hard to access either, but, as built out, what kind of tax revenue could we expect? I don't know if our tax assessor's office can help us with that. I will
Certainly ask.
I will say that, we talked about this before. Even though we may not be crazy about the design of this development, it probably is located properly. I think we all agreed, and there's a lot of RS around there. Let's just assume that it's, built out and 90% occupied or something like that.
Katie and then Sarah.
Okay, I actually differ on the suitability of this area for building. I'm a big fan of, I think it's good practice to have strong edges between urban and rural. I mean, this area was last planned for 20 years ago, and I don't think it's a sure thing that it's suitable for an urban extension. I think that's something that should be done very deliberately and with a lot of thought, and that our current land use planning process would probably yield some good data in either supporting it or not supporting it. I think we need both density, mixed use, infrastructure, schools, fire, transportation, transit. We've got to make the decision that this is an area we're opening up. I wouldn't call Saxon Woods, I don't consider it a residential area at this point. I would say it's, as it is, it's a very suitable edge between our urban area and the rural area, and it would be a great edge to maintain. I think unbuilt land, it doesn't provide much in taxes, but it doesn't demand much in services and infrastructure, and it does provide ecosystem services, natural resource services, trees, stormwater. There's nothing wrong with keeping rural land rural in my book.
I was going to say the same thing. I think Katie and my hand went up at the same time when Alice said, I think we all agree. And we were like, I know that there is a little edge. I guess that's of Saxon Woods coming around the other side, or maybe Holland Park. Like one little road, but outside of that, it's sprawl. It's the action of sprawl creeping out just one at a time, one more and one more into rural area, at a weird combination of low and relatively high density single family, to keep some open green space, but like the entire parcel is taking that on. And we do have this future land use planning process going on right now without knowing that there will be anything else in this area to sustain community life. It doesn't make sense to have this now, I don't think.
First, Monique, then Kristen, and then Joe.
Yeah, so I'm not as concerned about the zoning. I'm kind of okay with that part. But what I am hearing is there a significant amount of potential risk, more maintenance, minimal capacity for expansion. I've worked in the wastewater treatment space, and it is not an area you want to neglect. So I do have concerns about environmental compliance, and I would like to better understand what that life cycle management looks like. And maybe I'm just not getting the full picture tonight.
There was some mention earlier of if this were developed with septic instead, and I get the counterpoint to that as well, but for this property, if it were developed on lot suitable for septic, how many houses theoretically could be put on this lot?
They're not asking for a density reduction under it. They're just making them much more compact. What you would lose, I don't know that you could build it out at full density on septic tanks because you've got environmental areas, you've got other things. But you would lose the open space separation between Saxon Woods and the open space of the rear. That's part of the benefit if sewer is available. It's less roads, it's less water lines, it's less sewer lines to yield the same density on smaller lots. It would push it to the edges and you probably get slightly less return.
I see. Yeah, I guess in the spirit of like providing comment to the applicant, I feel like maybe there was an iteration where there was like a pathway or something that went to Holland Park. Am I making that up? Was that
Still there.
It's still there.
okay? Is that, I was thinking it was a stream, but is that kind of like the pathway that goes?
What is, sorry, Brad.
No, there's a note on there. The challenge with it is, with it being a binding plan and the park really not being in a position to agree to a location or even a connection. It's a fairly general comment on there that would give us the ability, if and when there was the desire to do a direct pedestrian connection to the park with approval of leisure services, that we've got a little wiggle room on where it goes.
I see.
But it's largely just right down there across from the little green space that you see in the neighborhood.
There's that connection there.
Where that little opening is, it goes straight through there and hits the park property.
Okay. Yeah, that was my one, kind of nit at this point, because obviously we've seen this several times. It's not going to change. So the question is, are we okay with there being development like that in this spot? So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
I will say I do agree with Alice on the sense that I do think residential fits here, so I don't have a problem with the zoning there. The density is the one thing probably the design I have a little concern about, the way that's kind of thrown in there. The impact of the lift station, I hear everything about the impact of what it costs to maintain versus tax dollars of this. But the one thing I did hear is that it would be built large enough for future developments and stuff around it. So industrial wise across the road would help with tax dollars. If there's not enough sewer out there, you can't put an industrial over there. So therefore having this there would help, and that would generate more tax dollars. I look at this, I think this is prime for residential. And the reason I think that is because we've got to start looking at residential properties and looking at these subdivisions coming through. We want industrial, we want businesses to come to town. We've got the one on the east side that's going to be built with, 1,500 jobs. We've got, Caterpillar still needs to expand. There's studies all over for counties surrounding us and for us. There's not enough housing for the amount of jobs that we're trying to create and we're bringing in here. If we don't start looking at that, we are going to be in a major bind about where we're going to put people, where we're going to bring people. If we want to attract businesses, where will they live? So I think this is a good spot for changing something. I'm not a big fan of the driving garage and just, I guess, one door straight like that. I'm not a big fan of the design, but I don't have a problem with the zoning change.
Sarah?
I agree with the statements about, I actually like housing on this spot. I think it'll make better use of Holland Park, and I don't know, I sort of like it, and I like that there's the green space in the plan. I kind of wanted to bring us back though to some of the concerns about the infrastructure piece. Like, I know we're going to get some questions answered about the pump station, but we haven't talked about traffic yet. And I wanted to hear a little bit more about that. And kind of, and as far as this binding site plan versus not having a binding site plan, I feel like I don't know enough about the procedure and the public utility concerns to know what would be best on that in particular. So I just feel like we need a little bit of clarification about that process as well as traffic. And then I also, so maybe Ms. Hogan, you could come up and just tell us about the traffic plan you guys talked about, and so, yeah, if you want to do that. Just tell us what that's about, and how that came about.
So I believe you were all previously provided with a copy of the traffic report. And if you don't have it, then we can definitely get that to you. As well as, so the initial traffic study looks like we completed it June 8th, 2022 with the original submission. And then there was an additional memo. On the date on that.
Can I interrupt there to just ask Brad to clarify, because there, I was gonna ask you a question about that. There's this letter in our packets on the airport and stationary that mentions a bunch of things that are being included, one of which is, a couple of which are traffic impact study related stuff, and I didn't have that in my packet. Is that something that wasn't included?
I mean, we historically have, a traffic study, then just given its nature, goes to our traffic engineer, and then we rely on him to provide comments based on something that can be difficult. I mean, unless it's an executive summary of one, it's a lot of paper to put in front of you for something that most of us don't understand unless we're engineers. So
yeah, I assumed as much, and so thank you. So we
were-
don't assume that we have laid eyes on the traffic study itself.
Okay.
If there's information about it, you want us to help, please share.
And it might be that I'm leading you down the wrong path, because maybe the questions I have are more for the city, for the traffic engineers to find out what, because did you all work with them?
We did, and Brad actually mentioned to me just before this meeting that he had an additional conversation with Tim, so I can let him talk about that.
Yeah.
But if you guys do have any additional questions for me, the traffic impact study was conducted June of 2022. And then there was an additional mitigation letter March 29th of this year. And that's how we got to the Cathwood and Benson intersection improvements, which Brad spoke with Tim about. So I'll let him take more on that.
Thank you.
Okay, and maybe that's something that, unless Sarah wants to know now, that before this is presented to us to vote, the traffic department will have clarified their feelings about the project.
And that's what I told Ms. Hogan before the meeting. The comments that you've got in the report right now are the comments that were reflective of the original submission. That was all the way back to when there were discussions about wanting a roundabout at Cathwood, which we felt like was too far removed from this property to have rational nexus to require them to put it in. But they have designed the intersection improvements at both Cathwood and Benson that have been provided to our engineering department. We just didn't get updated comments from them. So when it comes back to you before, what I want to have in front of you is a more detailed analysis from our traffic engineering department, as well as the drawings of those two intersections, so you can see what's being proposed in terms of improvements. We probably won't mark those as binding as part of it because, don't want to lock them into a final engineering design until they've gone through full engineering analysis. But the commitment from Hogan as part of this application is that they would pay for the improvements to both of those intersections as part of this zoning as a condition of approval.
And did our traffic engineers not only suggest changes on Cathwood and Benson because they can't do anything to Newton Bridge? But to me, adding left turn lanes on those two streets doesn't make me feel any better about it. But I'm also not a traffic engineer. But it just helps people kind of get on and off Benson, turn from Benson onto Newton Bridge as well as Cathwood, same thing.
And I'm not 100% sure that there weren't some improvements in Newton Bridge too.
Okay.
We'll
So
get you more
we'll get that next time.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
I think I only have one last thing, which is just to say, this is for just comments on the plan, is that I'm a little bit concerned about the proximity of some of those lots to that pump station. Now that we've heard about that is. So I just wanted to kind of point that out that, I mean, that's up obviously to the developer, to the applicant, but I would think that'd be kind of hard to sell those super close lots to the pump station.
I had some comments I wanted to make about some of the stuff that's already been talked about. Which are, I agree with Alice, that residential fits best on this, parcel. And, if I heard you right, Brad, a lot needs to be 25,500 square feet to have septic. And so this lot would lend itself to about the same number of homes, maybe with a little bit of a loss.
You probably lose 15%, I would imagine.
Okay, so a couple hundred homes on septic, which to me is worse than tying into the sewer. I do want to know more about the lift station cost, and I gather we will know more about that next time, but I have on my screen here a map of existing sewer, and the park and every one of these residential lots south of this parcel currently have sewer. So the sewer goes right to the edge of this parcel, and so extending sewer to this parcel doesn't seem like necessarily a terrible idea, with the caveat that I want to know more about the lift station costs. But the other thing I wanted to just kind of flag for all of us to think about is Alice and I are on the ARPA group, the Affordable Housing Consultant Group, and they've let us know that from 2010 to 2020, Athens dug itself into a 5,400 housing unit deficit. We're missing 5,400 units that we could have, and that's why our homeless population is going up, and that's why our housing prices and our rents are going up so much. And I think we need the homes, and I'm not inclined to, are there things about this project I think could be a little bit better? Yes, I think we certainly need a couple hundred homes. And as far as whether this is the right location for them, I love infill. I prefer infill. I think walkable, bikeable infill is great, but we don't have 5,400 lots of infill waiting to get built. And so we are going to have to build homes elsewhere in Clarke County in order to just dig out of the hole that we're in right now, to say nothing of meet the future demand, because every year we add 2,000 people, which means we need 1,000 new homes every year on top of the deficit that we have. So it's a crisis of our own making. And I think the harder we make it for people to build here on parcels like this, the more likely, ironically, they go over the county line and they build in the next county over. And so people are saying, I heard a couple of people say, this feels like sprawl. And to me, sprawl is when people build 5 miles north of this site, and then people drive in to Athens to jobs, rather than, this is, according to Google Maps, less than 3 miles beyond the loop. Not exactly walkable or bikeable to the Bottle Works, but 3 miles from people getting into work to their jobs in Athens. So that doesn't seem like sprawl to me in the same way that forcing our new residents, for all these new jobs that are getting created, to live in another county and drive 15 or 20 or more miles in to get to work. So I think generally I'm supportive of residential on this site. It's surrounded by RS 25 zoning on the north and the south. It's got a great big, lovely taxpayer supported park right on the periphery that this would be 200 more families that could enjoy that. So by and large, I think it's good. And so I appreciate the application and inclined to support it, subject to learning more about the details of whether it'll pay for itself. Alice, I think you.
Thank you for all those. I think that those are really helpful comments for big picture. I want to bring it back down for a second to the question of the binding site plan. And I'm looking at on page 6 of the staff report under water and sewer availability. It seems like the big issue that public utilities has is in their next last bullet point, lot lines plans extend all the way to sidewalks. Water meters must be set behind the sidewalks. Minimum 10, y'all can read yourself. So that seems like a big reason for not for PUD not recommending the binding site plan. Also, I guess, to go back to Sarah B's point about, you know, the location of the pump station in relation to the residential structures, a minimum of 200 feet from the nearest occupied structure. I'm also hearing what the applicant said, that she feels like she's on a little bit of a hamster wheel, you know, sitting back to come up with a binding site plan. And now we're saying, this probably isn't the best idea because of these kinds of concerns. I didn't see concerns like that similar in the other departments. I know Stephen said there were several who said.
There were some with Public Works, but that's specifically around once you start laying in houses and driveway separations.
Right.
and things
Okay,
like that.
got that. So I guess that's something that, you know, I would like to see some staff response to when we see this again. You know, obviously the applicant can work with public utilities about the sidewalks and the easements, and make sure that that's, you know, on the binding site plan in a satisfactory way. But I do think it's important for us to understand, you know, what are the obstacles that our department see to this particular binding site plan. I would prefer, like the mayor commission, to have a binding site plan for this space, but you know, I want to understand what the downsides are.
We can do that. And it may be that at the end of the day, with more information, there's a method by which we could craft, if you saw fit to do so, craft a condition that didn't just stamp that plan binding, but it was a condition that the road layout and lot pattern as shown on the plan shall be binding and limits of development, and leave it at that.
So we can give some administrative.
But it would give us some administrative flexibility, certainly in the placement of lot lines as they relate to the right of way. If we had to lose 2 or 3 lots because of the sewer, you know, you could do that without it just saying, well, this plan stamp binding and there's a lot there, so there needs to be.
130 feet from the pump station.
We don't do these binding plans on subdivisions like this very often, so we'll talk with the other departments and come back with a recommendation.
I kind of, just regarding the binding site plan, I feel like it came up just because when we first saw this, we were like, oh, is this really what's going to be built? Well, we would want to see a binding site plan to make sure that what we're looking at preserves the green space and we get what we get, because it's a straight rezone, bottom line. And now we've seen this so many times that clearly it's one of the few times where I feel like, oh, this is a straight rezone, but this is what's going to get built here. So I feel like that was really the only context with the binding site plan. And I feel like since then, it's been kind of a moot point, because this is clearly what's going to get built.
I think the applicant made that clear to us the very first time she was here, but still, you know, she could move to Los Angeles tomorrow and somebody else is in her, like, you know, I think that's why the binding site plan still is important. Even if we feel, I mean, that's just my take on it. Even if I feel really comfortable with what I'm hearing from the podium tonight, you know, who knows, 5 years from now?
Yeah, I like having it binding, and I appreciate your suggestion, Brad, that maybe we can make it, you know, aspects of it binding just by phrasing a condition in a certain way. And so I'd appreciate it if y'all could, because it sounds like, I think my recollection is exactly like Kristen's. Like, we were like, hey, this should be a binding site plan, so we know this is what we get. And then now it's like, well, there's a few little technical problems. And so it sounds like you've got a way to thread that needle.
I think we can craft language, regardless of our recommendation. We will give you a language option for a binding condition after we've talked to the other departments that we feel like would address the concerns with the minute details once we get into engineering.
I honestly don't remember what the benefit of the binding site plan was, just to keep the green space. Was that it?
I think the comments that came out of this group were that the limits of development as shown on the plan were binding. I think the next level of concern with the binding plan really came when this went in front of the mayor commission.
can you recap their
I
concerns?
mean, I think they took it a step further to saying really not comfortable without a binding plan. Period, where we, as I recall, when this was in front of you, we were kind of binding the envelope, including the stormwater area, and we gave them a percentage that they could increase that by for a little bit of wiggle room, but this group, I don't think the lean from this group was that road's got to be right there. It was in an effort to save the open space.
And that's the mayor and commission's rationale.
Mayor and commission, I think the mayor and commission took it one step further to really just, I want to know what's going to be built if we approve this and how it's laid out in a full binding plan.
Okay, all right, I see. I don't see a lot of, I mean, I can understand the rationale to preserve green space. I don't think it's a great design. I think we can have higher standards in Athens personally for neighborhood design. Houses that address the street property. I don't think it adds a lot of expense, especially when we have applicants who are willing to go to so much expense just to stick in their usual design. Yeah, and to kind of soapbox again, I think it'd be wonderful if we reformed our land use policies to make it really easy to do urban redevelopment on places we already have infrastructure, so that developers could really have a clear path ahead of them, lots of certainty and predictability, and provide houses to meet that crisis that we are in. Parking lots, got a lot of one-story commercial buildings that are aging, that are in really central locations. And one more thing, but I forgot, so.
Would just like to point out that we broke the record for the hottest day on Earth 3 days in a row this last month. And we are headed for, many major extinction events. And so unfortunately, any auto-centric development, any development that encourages people and in many cases requires people to go everywhere in their personal automobiles feels very socially irresponsible. That is just my thought.
Especially if they're in the next county, is my thought.
Joey. That was gonna be my thought. We've got to have housing. I mean, we can't create jobs and not have places for people to live. And I understand the counties around us are growing. People are going to be driving in. I mean, you make a shorter distance to me. You bring people into our county, you get the tax dollars there. I hear what you're saying. Katie, I heard what you said earlier, but as a private property owner, they're right. And then luckily to do something better than to put up a drive-through or a car repair place or something like that, at least we could, look at the zoning and make it a residential and try to slowly fit it into the county with who knows what could go around it with walkability. You got the park right there. I mean, that's great opportunity for kids. So that's kind of how.
Any other discussion? Okay. So that brings us to item 3 under new business on our agenda, which is 1040 Highway 20. SUP-2023-040659.
I don't know how many of you know, this is your first time?
Yes.
Welcome. Joanne DeJoserin's been with us for many years. She's one of our planners, primarily leads our hearings board activities, but she has a report for you tonight, and I've had it.
Okay, well, I don't have to introduce myself now, but good evening. I'm presenting the staff report for the special use permit 2023-04-0651. This is for a cell tower at 1040 US Highway 29 North.
The applicant has requested a special use permit in the commercial general zone for the installation of a new telecommunication tower. If this is intended to replace a tower at 1005, excuse me, Hull Road that was decommissioned and removed, which created a gap in self-service for this area. The site is a 12.67 acre tract, and it's located on the east side of US Highway 29 North. It's currently developed with 8 structures associated with Crazy Ray's self-storage. These are situated on that northern section of the property. The rest of the property is rather steep terrain, and there's a stream on the sort of running through that bottom portion. That's constrained with a 75-foot riparian buffer and floodplain. The future land use map designates the parcels along US 29 as general business with some rural as well as single family and mixed density residential classifications nearby. General business describes commercial areas that serve a variety of needs for the residents of the region. It's intended for small and large scale retailing and services that are auto oriented. The property is zoned commercial general, as I stated earlier, as is much of the US 29 corridor. There's some commercial rural as well as agricultural residential. Monopole towers like the one proposed that are, monopole towers that are 100 feet or less in total height are permitted outright in a CG zone. However, anything exceeding 100 feet will require the special use permit. The applicant has proposed a 170-foot monopole tower with a 4-foot lightning rod. They will lease this area back here, which is 80 foot by 80 foot for the tower and equipment. And they've secured easements for access that run through the existing pavement and kind of out the backside, as well as easements for utility and fiber lines and the 170-foot fall radius. The new tower will be able to accommodate up to 4 additional carriers, which is required by ACC code. Oops, let me go back, sorry. One consideration is the height and setback of the tower. The setback requirement is the distance, or excuse me, is the height of the tower. It needs to be that distance from the nearest property lines, which it is at least 170 feet from the 2 closest lot lines. Okay, looking at the design of the tower and the impact on views, this is a monopole, as I stated earlier, without guide wires. It's mostly obscured from the east and west views by existing trees and existing buildings. From the south and the north views, it's even less visible above the tree line. And the site on the left is where there is current construction happening with new apartments. So that view will be even a little bit more different than what we're seeing here today. So the comprehensive plan states that utilities should be available to all areas of the county, and there's a need for smarter utilities, including improved mobile access. This is important for an area that is seeing increases in development with both multifamily and commercial, and is in close proximity to the Athens-Clarke campus. Cell tower is consistent with the future land use designation of general business and commercial general zoning. Testing done in the area found that the cell signal is extremely weak, especially indoors, and it was shown that utilizing existing towers to locate a new antenna would not extend coverage to this area and would not fill the gap in service. Originally, staff recommended approval with the condition that all property covering the height of the tower is to be under the ownership or control of the applicant. The applicant has since submitted an easement agreement that does include that 170-foot fall radius. So that condition has been satisfied. Therefore, staff's recommendation is approval. And that concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. This time we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jay Sanders, 1311 Roanoke Estates Way, Watkinsville, Georgia. As staff said, we are proposing a 170-foot monopole tower. This tower is replacing a tower that got decommissioned due to the redevelopment of a property just south of here. So we're trying to replace that tower and the service that is now no longer out there. So currently, T-Mobile, for example, does not have, they have a temporary actual tower there, but it's only a temporary. It's just something that was actually set on a trailer. It's not a permanent structure until we can find a location that obviously we're hoping that y'all will agree on tonight. But this is, again, it's a 170-foot tower. We set this where we do meet the fall zone requirements of 170 feet. And the tower is available to meet and accommodate future carriers if some other carrier, Verizon, AT&T, anybody else decides to come out there. This will cover traffic along US 29 and also Hull Road, also indoor coverage as well for residential vehicle and stuff like that. With that, just kind of open up for questions.
When you say coverage, can you elaborate?
Yeah, so the coverage is meaning where if you're on your phone in that area, then you have coverage. Right now, for instance, if you go outside your coverage, you drop a phone call. If your carrier does not have, if it's not covering that area with the antennas, then if there's not service out there, then you not have coverage. If there's service there, you have coverage. So we're trying to cover the area that's currently the tower that was previously there was that was used to cover that area. Now that it's decommissioned, they've lost that. They've lost that coverage area.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders.
Yes.
Is there anyone here who wants to speak in favor of the proposal? And is there anyone here who's here to speak against it? All right.
I would say that the old tower was almost on the aerial that was shown. It was probably just a few inches off the bottom of that picture. And as we said in agenda setting, that was one that was removed with the approval of the tax credit affordable housing project. Yeah, it's just a few inches below that line there, right about there is where it was sitting. So.
Brad, why was it decommissioned? Was it at the end of its useful life?
No, it was the property. I think, yeah, you were here. We had a project that came through to build some tax credit, affordable housing with some commercial in front of it, right behind the Kroger. That was the property that the original tower had been sitting on for probably 20 years. And as part of that land sale, the tower had to be removed. They've set up a temporary tower in front of Modern Body for the meantime, but they needed to find a new permanent location.
I'd like to make a motion for approval.
Second. Motion by Kristen, second by Joey. Any further discussion?
Yeah, there's a staff condition recommended.
No, I think it was, there was original one and it's
been satisfied.
It's been satisfied.
So the motion, to be clear, is just straight
approval.
No. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
And as WIC is coming up, we're giving you all kind of new people this evening. This is WIC Pritchett, he is our arborist, joined us 4 months ago. Has it been 4 months, 5 months?
I can't even remember. So many trees.
Yeah, we have cost him in to doing a little bit of everything and happy to have him, but present Prince Avenue for you this evening. He prepared this report.
Good evening. If I misspeak, it's because my head is in the trees normally. Plans. This is the staff report for 2365 Avenue, 2023 061314. The request is for a rezone from commercial office to commercial neighborhood. This would allow for the conversion of existing bank to a restaurant. And commercial office prohibits restaurant. Commercial neighborhood permits them outright. The plan will add additional parking, and it will add sidewalk connections to the public right of way to the sidewalks. Okay, green button. Parcel is right here. It's a little over 2 acres, and Hawthorne is coming up here. Brent's here. You may know this as the, I think it's the Athens Federal Savings and Loan Association, or the bank with the eagle on the front of it. And we've got the Bells here, I believe, right? And then Burger King here. Loop, of course, is right there. It's on a promontory. If you've ever passed it, it's quite the outlook. As far as the future land use, it's very consistent with it. There will be no change here. This is representing the change from the CO to the CN. You can see here we already have commercial neighborhood there, commercial office space here, commercial neighborhood there, and office space there. Here's that great facade out front, imposing, and a rather large parking lot in the back. This is the view from the back, from the rear of the lot to the building itself. So as it stands right now, the site, this parking is all available. And then the addition of parking is hatched in red here, 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 a couple here, and then that's not hatched out in red. There's a proposed parking here. And then the sidewalk will connect here, presumably making pedestrian access to these office spaces. So, as I mentioned, it's compatible, or not, it's not future land use, but it's compatible with the 2023 comprehensive plan, which prioritizes redevelopment over greenfield expansion, which that would be the case here. It has the potential to decrease automobile trips by prioritizing alternative transportation modes, mainly from staff and employees in the office spaces nearby, walking here for the restaurant. It's compatible with the future land use and zoning maps. I mentioned the restaurants prohibited and permitted outright in the 2 different zones. It will need to resolve some code compliance issues prior to permitting in regards to parking. But still, the staff recommendation for this rezone is approval. That concludes the staff report.
Thank you, Wick.
You're welcome.
All right, now we'll hear from you.
Hello again. Mark Campbell, 1010 Commerce Drive, Beauregard, Georgia. Adaptive reuse. I think that's something to get excited about. This is almost an iconic location at the corner of Prince and Hawthorne. It's been a bank since the day it was constructed in the 1970s. It's a beautiful marble building with lots of glass. And my client, who's recently purchased the property as of June 30th, wants it to be a restaurant. And so his name is Dr. G. If you've ever had an opportunity to meet him, he's a wonderful man. He knows a lot about food, and I'm excited about the opportunity at this location to have fine dining. I will tell you that if restaurants were allowed in CO, we wouldn't be here tonight because want to keep the building, want to keep it commercial. Really, the challenges are that while there may be enough parking for a bank, there's not quite enough parking for a restaurant. And if you've ever been in the restaurant business, you certainly don't want to lose the opportunity for business when you have tables available, but people don't have a place to be able to park at your business. We do like the fact that there's existing sidewalks there, and we'll kind of create connections to those existing sidewalks that are from the perimeter to the internal portion of the project. But there will be opportunities for people to visit this location. It's just a great site. And there is, just for clarification, there is a lower level. You may have seen that kind of on that first picture with that beautiful eagle on the marble, which again, the client has reiterated he loves that, so he wants to keep that. But there's a lower level that has office space in and out that is being leased. That caused some confusion when the bank was closed because there were still cars in the parking lot because that office was being leased. So that is part of the reason why we do need a little bit more. As an engineer, it will be my challenge to provide ADA accessible route to that lower level because right now it's only available during based on those stairs that you see. So as part of this adaptive reuse, that will be, again, one of the challenges. The dumpster is not located in a good spot, so we're looking forward to the opportunity to maybe relocate that dumpster in a little bit better spot and provide a little bit better parking access as well. But happy to answer any questions you have. I think this is an exciting project, but again, it needs to be CN to be able to allow that restaurant use. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Is there anyone in the audience that's in favor of this proposal? Is there anyone here to speak against it? All right. Back up. Sarah.
Is this, I don't know who this is a question for, maybe you guys, is this lot, are they currently in compliance with lot coverage and canopy requirements? And if they rezone, I guess I'm kind of wondering sort of that the applicant would then be required to comply with those, if not already.
Rezoning on its face would not require
The building.
The change of use does, and again, to reiterate, the individual who has purchased this property's intention is to put it in a restaurant, but as you know, it's the request really at its simplest form is to extend the commercial neighborhood that's already on Hawthorne on both sides to the corner, which would then open up and allow commercial neighborhood type uses. With the change of use, they would be required to bring the site into compliance for parking, for sidewalks, things like that. If it triggered the 10% expansion of either the site elements or the building, then the requirements would also kick in. There are some thresholds that they have to meet, but just the simple change of use on its face would not necessarily require the tree ordinance to be met, for example.
So somewhere administratively, that would.
All of those things, the issues that have been talked about in the report as being non-compliant, that all will be dealt with at the time of permitting when the applicant brings it forward to change the use.
Okay, great.
Katie.
I heard parking mentioned, but I thought that was one of the elements on the plan that wasn't there was too much parking for the maximum. Can staff speak to that?
Yeah, I think actually the parking for a restaurant's either 1 per 100 square feet of building space or 1 per 4 seats, whichever number is less. And then you've also got the additional square footage of office at 1 per 450 underneath. So they're going to have to meet the minimums for both of that. I think they're going to probably be a little bit short based on seating with the layout and the plan conceptually that we have seen for the restaurant. I think the seating numbers going to drive the need for a few more parking spaces.
I don't have an issue with the change in use. I'm going out on a little bit of a limb and ask if there's any way we can make the adaptive reuse. I don't know. I'm tempted to say binding. I know it's a huge burden for a property owner, but do we have any tools that would, I mean, it seems like they're gonna do it anyway, but since it is in the interest of sustainability, have we ever done such a thing, like to, require an adaptive reuse of a building, or does it have to be a historic protection? Kind of for my own curiosity, but since it was listed as a plus, that's a point on that road. Yeah.
I'm pumping there. So I have a question for the applicant. You mentioned adaptive reuse, and so one of the great hallmarks of adaptive reuse is keeping these like whatever cool original parts of the building that exist, right? So what parts of the building specifically is the owner entranced with and wants to continue to?
I think it's the marble specifically. So you just don't see, can't remember the last time I saw a new building that was built that looks like this. And quite frankly, I don't know how much it would cost to build a new building that looks like this. From a very personal, selfish reason, if the client had said, hey, Mark, I need you to design a plan that requires the demolition of this building, I probably wouldn't be here tonight, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's beautiful, and it actually really lends itself. He's already engaged Milton Garland Associates, which is a local contractor that's done a lot of work on some adaptive reuse. He's doing the work at Wire Park right now to turn a portion of that into the new library in Oconee County. So and so I've seen the plans to where you might have had a bank president's office that can now become a private dining room. The biggest issue is the portion of the bank where the teller sat to access the drive-through is going to have to become the kitchen because there's not a kitchen in the bank, right? But that's maybe the least attractive portion of the building anyway. It's not the part you really, see as well, but I understand the question. And again, I think the applicant I've met with multiple times, the applicant's met with, again, a lot of other people, neighbors to, see if there's what their feedback might be as well, to make sure there's no opposition as well. He's much more engaging than I am to have those conversations. Every single conversation has been about this building and being able to keep how it looks, because it's not a historical structure, but it looks like it just belongs.
Well, so it sounds too like not only is the facade part of the plan, but there's also like some of the interior layout too as part of that plan too.
That's correct. I mean, there'll have to be some, the lobby becomes a dining room, right? But some of the ways, the entrance locations to the building really work well with how it works now. So it's just some of those things, but continuing to make it inviting, but it's the exterior that's the most important, but also utilizing as much of those interior components. Why you add a bar? Why you add a kitchen? Those types of things.
And then the lower level will continue to remain as office space.
Exactly. That's, again, he has a lease now on that. It's allowed by this existing zoning. I will tell you, again, full transparency, if this is a very successful restaurant, there's a chance that, if the lease runs out, it may not be office forever, with just an idea that, okay, well, could we expand the restaurant within its existing footprint, again, to adapt it so that lower level is actually extended as a part of that restaurant. That's probably more to bite off and chew right now when you're just starting a new restaurant, to make sure that it's going to work that way. So the revenue from that office continues to offset the purchase of this property.
I'd like to make a motion for approval.
Second.
By Kristen, second by, is that you, sir?
Yes.
Further discussion?
I just had one comment. I'm excited about it. I love the reuse and all that. The only thing I didn't see was any kind of outdoor seating or any kind of patio seating of that nature. I don't know if I'm missing it. And
you're not missing it at this point, and that's, if we didn't have the motion, I was fixing to try to bring you back a little bit. I mean, what this is really about at this point is whether or not this corner is appropriate as commercial neighborhood or not. If they wanted to put outdoor seating, which is my understanding that is, it may be a phase 2, but again, the need for the parking, that, it could certainly be done. In the drive-through right now, the canopies that you pull through for the windows for the drive-through becomes enclosed expansion of the kitchen. But again, those are all design elements that could or could not, don't necessarily, they don't have to be done.
Katie had a question.
Yeah, I didn't quite get the answer to my question, which I understand would be a big burden, but is there any way we can make the adaptive reuse part more binding? And in general, not just this.
I mean, the only way could you recommend a condition that the building remain? I think you probably could, but I think you would need to be able to thoughtfully explain what it is about the need to keep that building that is the only reason that this commercial neighborhood zone is appropriate for this location. You know, if you can tie those two things together, then I think it becomes potentially a condition, but that wouldn't have been something that we would have recommended.
Thanks, I understand.
This is just a personal question. Do we know what type of restaurant this might be?
What's been indicated to me is, again, fine dining, so high-end restaurant. So I haven't seen a menu or anything to that effect. So Dr. G's traveled all over the world and eaten food all over. So I don't know that he would specifically pigeonhole himself or label to a specific type. But yeah, fine dining is what's been given.
We'll be having lunch there one day. This passes.
Further discussion, pending motion. Should we do a roll call on that one or just voice vote?
I think voice vote.
Motion is to approve the rezone as proposed. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Brings us to item 5, 243 Bray Street, item number zone -2023-05-0871. Start with staff report. Be honest, guys.
All right, good evening. So this is 243 Bray Street, zoning number 2023-05-0872. So the request is to rezone from an RS5 to RM3, essentially taking the future land use from mixed density residential to Main Street business. And the applicant states that they would like to build a 24-unit, 54-bedroom residential multifamily building. And they've also stated that they'd be willing to build affordable units, but there is no documentation in the application explaining how. You can see it right here. So we are right in the middle of Bray Street. Just north, we have the Homes Village, as well just south, the subdivision that the Land Trust created. We have North Ave along the western side of the picture here, with some of the governmental buildings related to the homeless groups. For the future land use that's currently mixed density residential, as you can see, would create somewhat of an isolated future land use location by making it Main Street business. And then from a zoning perspective, we are going from RS5, which is in the surrounding area, just south of it and north, as you can see, to an RM3, which would create a relatively isolated pocket. This is a picture from the front. As you can see, the house is set back pretty far, and we have the Land Trust homes on the right here, and then another single-family home on the left. This is a survey of the property showing essentially what is currently there. One thing of note is that survey did pick up a structure that is going over the line from one of the residential locations, but is really just the home and the driveway associated with it. So for staff recommendation, it is partially compatible with the comprehensive plan. It's increased access to affordable housing, and then also it's an infill and redevelopment location. However, it is still incompatible with the future land use and the zoning maps as it creates isolated district. It's also incompatible with zoning ordinance. Subject parcel will struggle to accommodate the full yield. Essentially, from what we were given in the application, as there was no concept plan, we weren't able to find a way that the RM3 to the maximum that the applicant proposed would work, not just with things like parking, but also things like stormwater management, fire, and then a few other things. So without any type of concept to kind of guide us on that, this is really just a request looking at the rezone itself and whether it is a rezone, that this location is a good choice for that type of rezone. So between that, we're recommending denial for both the future land use and the rezone itself. That concludes the report. Thank you.
We'll hear the applicant.
Okay. Good evening, esteemed planning committee members. I'm J. Paul Smith, a 2023 graduate of Terry College of Businesses School for Real Estate. Go Dogs. I'm proud to call Athens my home for the past 5 years, and I'm deeply committed to its growth and prosperity. Today, I present my first rezoning proposal, holding significant potential for our community. Having witnessed firsthand the abundant growth in East Athens, I'm inspired as a real estate professional to create spaces that cater to our residents' needs and contribute positively to the city's fabric of growth. This proposal's aim is to enhance our community by offering well-designed, space-efficient, and affordable housing options closer to downtown and key employment centers. As committee members, I appreciate your dedication to Athens' betterment, and I'm eager to share my vision with you today. Thank you for this opportunity to contribute to our city's vibrant and inclusive future. As a new graduate of UGA and a devoted resident of Athens, I stand before you with a vision to contribute to our city's growth and address the pressing need for housing density. My proposal seeks a rezoning at 243 Bray Street from RS5 single-family residential to RM3 mixed-density residential for a multifamily building. The heart of this proposal lies in constructing a thoughtfully designed development that aligns with Athens' future growth goals. I aim to convince the committee that 243 Bray Street is a lot best suited for multifamily building and that the site exhibits the potential for 50 bedrooms per acre density or greater. No formal site plan has been submitted at this time, as this flexible approach ensures we meet community needs while adapting to future dynamics. We are keenly aware that professional site engineering will be necessary when this reaches the permitting phase. It is essential to underscore that the concept plan presented today is intentionally non-binding, emphasizing our commitment to engaging with the community needs and the planning committee's good judgment. As we focus on sustainable growth, the importance of affordable housing cannot be understated. After conversations with planning staff, we understand that the formal agreement for participation in Athens' inclusionary zoning program will occur after zoning approval. We understand the nature of this program and will arrange with the Department of Housing and Community Development to make either 15% of our units available at 80% area median income or for 10% to be reserved at 60% area median income. I aim to clarify today, our intentions are to create housing opportunities that cater to a diverse range of residents, especially those who are currently facing housing challenges confined by pricing and lack of availability. Our ultimate decision, whether to go with the 10% or 15% inclusionary reserve, will be based on further conversations and assessment of community needs. Beyond adding to overall housing supply in a desirable interloop location, this proposed development promotes a more sustainable and walkable Athens. The central location is less than 1 mile from downtown and will encourage residents to rely less on cars, fostering a stronger sense of community and a closer connection to public transit and local amenities. I come before you today with the belief that this proposal is not only feasible, but also aligned with the forthcoming growth along North Avenue to the $25 million of federal raise funding directed towards sidewalk improvements and street improvements and being situated within tax allocation district number 5. The location of 243 Bray Street holds tremendous potential to contribute positively to the dynamic evolution of our city. The rezoning proposal seeks to pave the way for a progressive development that meets the demands of housing density and embodies the spirit of Athens growth. Members of the Planning Committee, I want to take this opportunity to address the staff concerns raised in the preliminary report. I deeply value the expertise and insights of the staff, and I believe that open dialogue and collaboration will lead us to a mutually beneficial resolution. I wish to discuss the points raised and provide my perspective in response. While the proposal aligns with the comprehensive plans to some degree of increasing access to affordable housing and prioritizing infill development, I acknowledge the need for more detailed information on affordability. Rest assured, I am committed to providing clear documentation to ensure necessary units meet affordability standards. I recognize that the requested rezoning to RM3 may initially seem incongruent with the existing future land use designation. However, the proposed Main Street business designation, along with the project's mixed-use concept, presents an opportunity to harmoniously blend residential and small-scale commercial elements that can revitalize the area. RM3 acts in the spirit of the mixed-density residential future land use, which allows for RM1 and RM2 zoning, and it aims to blend residential with low-intensity retail and office use. The only difference is scale. As the staff rightfully highlighted, the absence of a binding site plan is both intentional and allowed by code, rezoning to allow for flexibility and adaptability. I agree with the staff's observation that the requested RM3 rezoning allows for higher density compared to the surrounding area. However, I intend to work with engineers to propose a carefully planned and architecturally designed development that integrates seamlessly into the neighborhood while providing housing options that cater to diverse needs. The stormwater management plans will be thoughtfully developed throughout the building permit phase, ensuring adherence to all environmental regulations and sustainability goals. I also want to reassure the committee that traffic patterns of Bray Street and North Avenue will not be disrupted by development on the site. A traffic impact analysis is not required for this project as it will generate less than 1,000 vehicle trips per day. Even with inclusionary zoning applied, an absolute maximum of 350 vehicle trips per day will occur with no more than 100 trips in a single hour. The proposal is not solely about creating housing units, it is about fostering a sense of community and sustainability. By centralizing housing options and enhancing walkability, we can positively impact the quality of life for residents and contribute to a better connected city. I value the staff's preliminary report and their commitment to ensuring responsible growth for actions for Athens. I want to assure the planning committee that my proposal seeks a collaborative and informed process. Together, we can address concerns and leverage opportunities to create a development that aligns with the city's vision, fosters community growth, and delivers a positive impact for all. The proposed rezoning offers an excellent opportunity to revitalize a large, underutilized property that lies in the heart of Athens. Currently occupied by a single-family home, this parcel has remained functionally stagnant for decades. Our vision is to transform this wasted land into a productive community, offering both housing and retail opportunities that align with the surrounding context and give residents walkability on the new and expanded North Avenue sidewalks. A development of this nature brings with it its host of economic benefits to the local community. The construction phase will also generate job opportunities and stimulate economic activity. Additionally, the presence of new residents in the area would increase foot traffic and demand for local businesses, further supporting growth in Athens. When completed, the taxable basis for this property will be significantly higher. An increase in taxable value of land improvements completes key objectives of Tax Allocation District 5 and will represent significant private investment into the neighborhood. This significant private investment demonstrates our belief in the potential and the growth of Athens-Clarke County as we aim to stimulate further investment and encourage more thoughtful development that aligns with the community's vision. Perhaps the most critical aspect of this proposal is the potential to provide centralized housing options for the Athens workforce. Many hardworking citizens currently reside on the outskirts of town, far from their places of work. This development will offer them an opportunity to relocate closer to employment centers, shortening commute times, and reducing their reliance on cars. By creating a modern and walkable living environment near employment hubs, we can enhance the overall efficiency of our city and improve the quality of life for our labor force. The premise of density centralization has proven to decrease traffic loads in other cities and is an important factor for responsible building practices that can help us to mitigate harmful carbon footprints. I understand that the density of the proposed development has been a topic of concern. However, as a graduate educated in assessing site potential, I have carefully considered the municipal code and how development plans might impact the surrounding community. I am confident a suitable building can be constructed after accounting for parking, tree canopy, conservation, fire access, and stormwater management. Given the unique hatchet-shaped profile and the lengthy front lawn, planned improvements to the site will have minimal visibility or disturbance to neighboring properties. I want to emphasize the size potential for the building as well, which will have specific setbacks in order to comply with the zoning regulation section 9-15-22. The fire code requires a 50-foot setback on one side, while all other sides will have a 30-foot setback to comply with section 9-15-22. This building footprint will be 110 feet wide and 90 feet long allowed on the lot, and will allow for 10-foot height bonus to the allowed RM3 height of 40 feet because of setbacks being 30 feet or greater, resulting in a maximum allowable height of 50 feet above ground level. The proposed building adhering to the zoning standards of RM3 could thus be a 5-story structure with ceiling heights ranging from 8 to 10 feet. Considering the parcel size, a mixed-use building spanning 50,000 square feet could be constructed with only a 10,000 square foot footprint. This will occupy only 1/5 or 20% of the 47,000 square foot available parcel, meaning that 80% of the surface lot will remain available for various purposes like roadways, fire lanes, tree conservations, stormwater management, and landscaped areas. I am no engineer, but I believe that all of these can be correctly addressed within the 80% remainder of the lot. Density is not merely about the number of units, it's about addressing the housing demands of the community. Our proposal is not simply about increasing density, but about creating a development that aligns with community needs, respects the existing context, and contributes positively to Athens' future. We believe that this project, with the right approach and consideration, can be a valuable addition to the neighborhood, providing much-needed housing options and enhancing the overall quality of life for residents. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I welcome any questions or feedback from the planning committee or fellow community members.
Thank you. Is there anyone here who wants to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here to speak against it?
Evening, everyone. My name is Steve Vogel. I live at 255 Bray Street. My wife and I have lived in that house for 10 years now, and we are against this zoning proposal. Essentially, we don't want an apartment building in our backyard. We have the longest property line that shares with 243. And I've also spoken to the residents of Cannon Street and the other land trust apartments, and they've all signed saying that they oppose this rezoning as well. So between myself, there's our house, and there are 5 other homeowners who are all against rezoning this property. We don't want the disruption from the construction. You know, we all pretty much moved out of apartments and moved into a quiet single-family neighborhood because we wanted to be in quiet neighborhoods. So, we're against the increased traffic, the increased noise. Bray Street itself, I know there's been talk of like traffic assessments and whatnot. Bray Street has a lot of foot traffic, and that traffic walks directly down Bray Street. We do have sidewalks out there, but there are a lot of people that just walk on that road. And there are a lot of mothers with young children that walk on that road, and nobody maintains their lane when they're on that street. There's a lot of speeding. It's dangerous. We've had animals hit and killed out there. I haven't seen any pedestrians get hit yet, but I don't feel like adding more cars to the mix is going to make that better. So in conclusion, myself and all the neighbors who share property lines with 243 oppose rezoning 243 Bray Street.
Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak against this application? Back on the round. Start us off.
I'll just start off with, I guess, sort of the obvious question, and the applicant did address some of these in his presentation, but RS5 to RM3 is a big leap. And I've got some very serious concerns about, especially since this is a straight rezone, we all have our issues with that process, but I'm really hesitant to, to make that leap from RS5 to RM3, and also Main Street business, to just looking at the colored zoning and future land use maps we have here, it's not a good look. So, so really, without knowing more about how this property would fit on this, how this building would fit on this property, I am very hesitant to pursue this. So,
Sarah,
talk me out of it.
I have a question for the applicant. I understand that you've done a lot of studies, and that there may be stuff that we can or can't see from what you've learned. What was your reasoning or motivation for saying, I want this to be an RM3 versus an RM2 or an RM1?
Well, I haven't spoken yet at one of these rezoning hearings, but I've attended several, and I've heard that a repeated concern is the need for infill development, specifically density. And I see the easier option would have been for me to come here tonight and pursue RM2, as that would not be against my current designation for future land use. However, I see at the maximum with inclusionary zoning, RM2 could suit 40 residents, and only 4 of them to 6 of them would be inclusionary by the 15 to 10 threshold. This would effectively not only double the number of residents that could have the benefit of living within a 1 mile radius to downtown Athens, would also double the number of residents that would be able to have inclusionary zoning rates with their habitation. So my ultimate intention is to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people.
Thank you.
Actually, sorry, I have another question.
Sorry.
Here we go. So, and there's one point in your presentation, did you say there would be retail on the site?
Yes, the ground floor as required by Main Street Business. I would like to have a retail component with parking behind, because as we know in this subject area, the CVS recently closed down, and there's not that I'd want to put a restaurant in because I couldn't even by code, but there's an effective food desert in the immediate area. The Piggly Wiggly underserves customers, and essentially it's just an area that's starved for retail options, especially office-related options. And I know that as a proponent of both RM1, RM2, or RM3, it has a mixed density component that wants to bridge in a 2,500 square foot or less, either retail or office component. And I'm fully willing to do this in order to adhere with the restrictions of mixed density business.
Gotcha, yeah. Yeah, I guess, kind of going off what Alice was saying earlier, so this, it sounded like from things that you were saying, like there's a clear vision for this, for what you're thinking about for this property. And I really love the idea of like, getting density closer to downtown and like ability, totally hear what you're saying. I feel like there's sort of a trade-off to when we zone up to allow more density. I feel anyway, I would like to see kind of what we're going to get for that trade-off, right? So it's like kind of a balancing act, and also kind of what we're promising to the neighborhood around that property too. Of this is we're gonna change the zoning near you, and this is what you're promised in return to be your backyard neighbor, that sort of thing. So, so anyway, yeah, just thank you.
Absolutely.
Good,
and I did prepare some renderings to visualize, but as I'm no engineer, they're not binding.
Yeah, I guess
they're able to visualize.
Is like it's a lot easier to make a decision like this when we have some binding plans that we can look at and know kind of what we're going to get for that trade-off.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, so that was kind of my thought to my fellow planning commissioners, of like what are we getting for that trade-off? And I'm not sure if I can be okay with that trade-off for not knowing what we're getting in return.
I have a question.
I have a question for Brad first. Can you clarify what commercial uses would be permitted in RM3?
I'm afraid you will have.
Confused about that one too.
I think Mark, you got the code. It's really limited. There may be 2 or 3 that you can up to 2,500. Most of them are going to be special use, I think, but.
Professional service office is 2,500, bed and breakfast.
And laundry.
Couple,
I think general retail is special use up to 2,500. But I think there's laundry, there were 2 or 3 that kind of fall into that. Bakery, but largely it's office space that could go in by right up to 2,500.
Okay.
I have
a question too.
Yeah, just, I think the question of what are we getting in return for giving density is it's a framing that sits weirdly with me because infill density is its own benefit. Now, whether or not this is the appropriate amount of infill density in this exact lot, that's reasonable minds can certainly differ. Yeah, I just, like, the density is itself the good, in my opinion, but there's neighbors to consider. I mean, regardless of what happens here today, in District 2, I would significantly urge the applicant to looking into some sort of binding site plan or plan development, something that the commissioners can more easily control, but I don't know. I'm inclined to say go for it as far as the density goes.
Sarah.
I think that it is too dense for this parcel. I think the existence of those single family homes, I think something that's important is the transition and going from, the relatively small lot sizes on Cannon Drive to suddenly a building that could be 50 feet tall. If I understood that right, 40 feet tall, 40 feet tall?
Plus.
Yeah.
Section 9-15-22, it allows for an additional 10 feet of height if a 30-foot setback is maintained around the entire perimeter.
I guess I just think that 50 units per acre is too dense to be immediately next to the super small, relatively small lots. But all of the other arguments the applicant made, I agree with. I don't really know if I could even stomach more than RM1. I think going to mixed density residential makes sense to me on this lot for all the reasons the applicant said. I can't get my head around more than, if somebody wanted to argue in favor for 24 units per acre, which is RM2, I could maybe be convinced, but I think 16, I think the RM1 would be the most appropriate designation for a rezone for this.
Yeah, I think, kind of similar comments, like, infill redevelopment is great. I think, there's lots of people who need to live near downtown, and the closer they can be, better. My inclination is almost exactly the same as what Sarah just said, which is RM3 seems like a huge stretch here. Going all the way, like Alice said, from RS5 to RM is a jump. Going to RM2 is a bigger jump. Going to RM3 is a huge jump and requires a change to the future land use map, which we're generally more hesitant to grant than a rezone that is compliant with the future land use map. And so I think that I don't think I could support RM3 here. I think the reason I said not entirely on board with Sarah is I think I could probably see my way to RM2 making sense here, because we just approved a rezone of a land trust property up on the corner that on the bend at Bray Street there to RM2. There's another one, a few doors down in the other direction that's currently RM2. And so that is consistent with the neighborhood. This place is right next door to RM1, and that also would be consistent with the neighborhood. And that is just, RM2 is 50% of the density, less than 50%. It's 24, not 50. And, more in keeping with the neighborhood. It would be a shorter building, and it just would fit in much better. The applicant talked about traffic and said, there would never be more than 100 car trips per hour, even at the peak. And that sounds like an awful lot. I've been on Bray Street, and, it's narrow. And it's, as the neighbor mentioned, it's narrow, it's got a blind curve. People sometimes go a little too fast, and 100 new car trips an hour on that street strikes me as fairly significant. detriment to the folks that live there. So I appreciate the applicant's desire to provide housing for Athens. I think that's great. I think more market rate units is great and more affordable units is great. 24 bedrooms per acre with the inclusionary zoning bump gets you up 50% from that. So that's still 39 or 40 bedrooms on this 1 acre site. So that's plenty of density, I think, for this street. And so, yeah, I would just encourage the applicant to rethink that way, whichever way, however it comes out of this body, the applicant, I believe, could take it to the Mayor and Commission for a vote or could reconsider. And I would encourage the applicant, regardless, to maybe consider presenting something that's a little less of a stretch. And I think, my advice to you, which is maybe worth what you're paying me for it, which is nothing, is that you would have a far better chance of getting not only from this body, but from the one that actually matters, because we just make recommendations for the Mayor and Commission to actually make decisions. So I would just encourage the applicant to think about something a little less ambitious.
RM2 will actually get you to 36 if you utilize the inclusionary zoning ordinance.
36 unit or
36 beds per acre.
This is a little bit outside the scope of this discussion, but I just want to say I do teach in the Terry College. And over the years, I've worked with folks in the real estate department. And I'm just really happy to hear you talk about this kind of vision. And you're fresh out of school. So that does make me, I know that there's a lot of emphasis on sustainability and, sustainable land use and all of those things. So I really, I don't want to get all maternal here, but I trust you that your heart and mind's in the right place. But just to re-echo what Matt said, and my advice is probably worth even less than his, but maybe a smaller step would get you, you'll still get up on the ladder of helping the community with more housing and more affordable units. And what I completely agree with you is an excellent place for that. So, but that is a lot to ask the neighborhood to go from RS5, which is small lot, single family residential development, to RM3, which is our densest multifamily zoning. So, but go Terry.
Taylor?
Yeah, I do think your heart is in the right place, but I do think that's a lot to go on that lot in that space. I personally think you should stay single family. Just that whole area. I mean, you got a church on the backside of that, in the church parking lot. And I just don't think that, well, I know with having an apartment complex, people are going to take advantage. If your apartment is closer to that parking lot, they're going to try to take advantage of that church parking lot, which causes problems there. But I don't think that this vision is correct for that location. And so I'm
To make a motion to deny.
Second.
Motion to deny by Kristen, second by Alice. Brad, voice vote?
Let's do a roll call vote on this one.
This is for future land use, right?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Who votes on this? Yeah. Oh.
Brad, procedural question, if they vote down future land use, do they still have to vote on zoning?
Since they're a recommending body, yes, we still vote both of them to send forward.
All right, roll call, Beresford. This would be a vote to deny, so yes is saying no.
To the future land use?
Yes.
No, yes.
Hearing?
No.
Goodwin?
Yes.
Kinman?
Yes.
Morales?
Yes.
Pass?
Yes.
Sanders?
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-1.
Make a motion. The zoning.
Zoning.
Second.
Can I do a little discussion? Sorry, I just want to get one thing off my chest. I also feel that the whole, like, we just discussed how important infill housing is. But I actually wanted to suggest the applicant to, and everyone to continue thinking about density versus scale, and especially missing middle housing, something Matt has helped bring to Athens. Just the ideas of what mass and scale of building tends to be more compatible with a single family neighborhood, even though it may technically have a much higher density than other places. Just density isn't everything. It's also design and some other factors.
Do you want to describe a little more what missing middle might look like?
I think it's too late. It's a great book on it. Okay. But I think that
Google missing middle.
I guess I wanted to place it with we do have a responsibility to add this infill housing. I think homeowners can also are entitled to some degree of predictability as to their neighbors. Not total control, but not quite such a large jump.
Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. Oh, sorry.
Brad, can you, talking about this during agenda setting, could you just remind me of sort of what our options could be in terms of what we send up? Like if we wanted to somehow use this process to encourage like resubmitting or reworking the application, so requesting one of the lower RMs, is there a way for us to do that?
I mean, that will be reflected in the summary sheet that goes to the commission that you talked about, lower, the possibility of other RM options.
Okay.
But probably the cleanest option at this point, following this recommendation, we can certainly have discussions with the applicant. If he proceeds up to the mayor and commission with the recommendation, and if he is denied at the mayor and commission, then it's a 12-month wait before he can reapply. He could withdraw the application and submit a new application for a different zone prior to the legal ad being run for the public hearing, which is about a week to 10 days from now administratively, and it just goes away. If the legal ad is run, then he has to appear before the commission and request a withdrawal. They typically would approve that, or he can, talk to the commissioners and see what happens. But this discussion that occurred this evening will be reflected in the information provided to the commission.
Okay. Okay, great.
Okay, so the motion is to deny the requested rezoning, and it has a second, so roll call vote.
Yes, please.
Harrisford.
Yes.
Gary.
No.
Goodrum.
Yes.
Kinman.
Yes.
Morales.
Yes.
Pass.
Yes.
Sanders.
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Motion passes.
So, all right, item 6 has been withdrawn.
Item 6 was held. We expect it to be back in front of you next.
That brings other business, and the planning commission president does not have a.
Just vice president.
You've had to live with that for 2 years. So, I do have a brief report. One, just again, we don't see him on the screen, but welcome to John Hawkins, who is the new attorney who will be representing us. There he is in a little bitty picture. Glad to have John on board. He's going to serve as a great asset towards staff with his guidance from a legal perspective. So we're excited about that. An update from Tuesday night's commission actions. The rezoning request to RM3 for Baxter Drive was denied unanimously by the commission. West Broad Street rezoning, which was the hotel site in front of Beach Haven, was approved with the condition as you recommended it, with the full access in, right turn only exit on the new driveway on Broad Street. Joe Carey Road was approved, and the Danielsville Road special use for the vet clinic was approved. And if you'll just oblige me for like 30 seconds, probably shouldn't do this, but I want to tell you about, if you don't know Dr. G, who was one of the owners, I kind of wish he would have been here tonight, because he is a very interesting individual. Chances are, if you have eaten at many of the national restaurants around the country, whether they be chain restaurants or sit-down restaurants, the seasoning and the flavorings that go on those foods created here in Athens by Dr. G. Out on Ben Burton.
So the doctor is a PhD in something?
He is, I'm not sure. That when he introduces himself to you, that's how he introduces himself. He's Dr. G. And, that's what he does, is he creates spice mixes, flavoring mixes, breading mixes for food chains and restaurants all over maybe the world. But it's just interesting. You always learn new things about things that are right here in our own town that we had no idea about. And he's got a place out there on Ben Burton that he's been for several years and looking to expand and looking to get in the restaurant business. So,
Brad, can you, I'm surprised by the unanimous denial of the Baxter Street. Can you kind of summarize the conversation with the objectives we heard?
So we're in the black building?
We have to unanimous.
No, this is the RM3 that.
University Gardens.
this was University Gardens. Yes.
Yeah, what happened?
I mean, I think it largely centered based on the discussion around the lack of a binding plan. And they were encouraged that if they wanted to put something together with a binding development plan, that maybe do so. But yeah, and it was in the property owner, the applicants weren't even at the meeting Tuesday night. So, but the neighbors from Fortune Drive certainly were, and I was, yeah.
Very nice.
So,
Not say that. I didn't say that.
okay, that's all I have. Motion to adjourn.
Okay. We have a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Hey.
Thank you all. Thank you, John.
Matt, back when I was-
Thanks, Brad. This works pretty well, I think.